It was just past noon on a sweltering summer day when HOA Karen decided to assert her authority in the most ridiculous and dangerous way possible. My neighbor's daughter, a sweet, disabled 10-year-old with limited mobility, was visiting our home for a playdate. Her parents had parked and were only stepping inside for a few minutes when Karen, ever the self-appointed enforcer, spotted the car. Without a moment's hesitation, Karen stormed over, banging on the vehicle, screaming about unauthorized parking and violating HOA rules. When no one answered immediately, because, of course, the little girl inside couldn't operate the doors, Karen's anger escalated. She pulled out her keys and locked the doors, leaving the child trapped inside. The temperature in the car was climbing fast. The little girl, confused and scared, pressed against the window, crying for help. A few neighbors had started to gather, some calling 911, but none intervened directly yet. That's when a social worker from the local child welfare services happened to be walking by. She had come to check on another case in the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, and immediately recognized the danger. Karen, realizing she had an audience, started shouting about protecting HOA property and enforcing rules, thinking she could justify her actions. But the social worker was already on the phone, reporting the incident with urgency and calling local law enforcement. By the time the police arrived, Karen was still leaning against the car, waving her arms and trying to explain herself. But the officers didn't need much explanation. The social worker's testimony alone was damning, and the little girl was clearly overheated and distressed. They opened the car doors, rushing the child to safety. Karen, red-faced and sputtering, was immediately handcuffed. The social worker, who had witnessed the entire incident, stayed on the scene to give her statement. Neighbors looked on, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others quietly snapping photos and videos for evidence. The story spread like wildfire on social media within hours. In the police report, Karen was charged with child endangerment, unlawful confinement, and harassment. Her attempts to justify the act with HOA bylaws were laughed out of court. HOA regulations cannot and do not allow someone to trap a child in a car. Meanwhile, the child was taken to the local hospital for evaluation, thankfully unharmed aside from some heat-related stress. Her parents were furious, but relieved that a responsible adult had been there at the right moment to prevent what could have been a tragedy. The fallout for Karen was swift. She was removed from the HOA board, fined heavily, and faced criminal prosecution. Neighbors who had previously tolerated her antics now refused to have any dealings with her. Videos of her arrest and the social worker's brave intervention circulated online, and the hashtag #KarenLockedUp began trending locally. It was a harsh lesson in accountability. HOA rules exist to manage communities, not to endanger lives. Karen learned the hard way that when you cross the line and put a child at risk, there are consequences that no HOA authority can shield you from. By the next week, the neighborhood had settled back into a peaceful rhythm, and the little girl was back to enjoying her summer playdates, none the worse for wear. Karen, on the other hand, was facing a long legal battle and the realization that power without responsibility can ruin your life in moments. Sometimes, justice shows up not as a slow court case, but in the form of timely intervention, an alert social worker, vigilant neighbors, and law enforcement responding to blatant danger. For this neighborhood, the story of Karen locking a child in a car ended with the right people winning. The little girl safe, Karen in custody, and a community reminded that no one is above the law.